You're going to plot your own mystery this week. Not write it. Plot it. We're using Agatha Christie's The Murder of Roger Ackroyd as our skeleton. The victim, the killer, and the country house setting are ready-made. Your job is to build 6 suspects around them, frame them all, and survive notes from your editor. Yes, your editor is part of the game. She has theories. She finds plot holes. She refuses to let go of the murder weapon until you can explain why the victim didn't see it coming. She's relentless, and she's why your plot is going to hold. 6 days, 1 murder, 0 pressure to draft a single scene. You bring a journal and a pen. We bring the case file, the weapon, a village busybody, a second body, a locked room puzzle, and 4 playing card suits worth of motive. By Friday, you'll have a fully populated murder board and a working understanding of why Christie's most famous trick still works 100 years later. If you've ever wanted to plot a cozy mystery without committing 50,000 words to find out whether your idea holds, this is the version of that. You don't have to be a writer. You don't have to know the book. Come brainstorm with us. Learn how Christie built one of the genre's most famous murders, and find out which of your friends would absolutely frame a parlor maid for an inheritance they never should have qualified for. Spoilers follow for The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. If you haven't read it yet and you want to be surprised the way 1926 readers were, hit pause and go read it first. We'll be here when you get back. If you already know who did it, or if you don't mind knowing, stick with us. Welcome back, plotters. Pour something warm. 6 days, 1 murder, 6 suspects you'll build from scratch using a cast Christie wrote in 1926 as your craft reference. Grab your journal and a pen. Let's plot the mystery. Day 1. Build your lineup. We're working off Christie's famous novel. Here's what we're covering up with our own version of the plot. Setting: Fernley Park, a Georgian country house at the edge of an English village so small everyone knows whose marriage isn't working. Interwar period. Roses past their peak. A village doctor who makes house calls. A vicar's wife with her ear to the door. The kind of place where someone notices if you change your hat. Victim: Roger Ackroyd, age 53. Widower. Manufacturing fortune. Generous to the village in the way that lets him expect things. Recently engaged to a woman named Mrs. Ferrars, who was found dead 2 days ago of an apparent overdose. The village is still whispering about that one when the second body turns up. Weapon: an ornamental Tunisian dagger taken from a silver curio table in the victim's own study. Curved blade, bone handle. The kind of thing Roger picked up on a trip he liked to mention. Cause of death: single stab wound, below the left collarbone, delivered while the victim was seated in his study chair facing his desk. Body discovered just before 10 p.m., after the dinner party guests had departed. Study door locked from the inside. Window unlocked. The dagger left on the floor. Time of death: approximately 9:30 p.m., give or take 15 minutes. The killer: Dr. James Shepherd, village doctor, friend of the victim, first on the scene after the body is discovered, volunteered his services to the visiting detective, has been taking notes on the case from the moment it began, plans to publish them. He's the one writing this. Motive: diamonds, money. Shepherd had been blackmailing Mrs. Ferrars for over a year. She killed her husband, he found out, and he'd been bleeding her finances ever since. Mrs. Ferrars killed herself rather than continue paying him. She left a letter for Roger Ackroyd, naming her blackmailer. Roger received the letter the night of the dinner party. He never finished reading it. Concealment strategy: the witness archetype. The witness kills, then tells the story. He's first on the scene. He volunteers to help. He writes things down. He gives statements. He befriends the detective. He's not hiding from the investigation. He's editing it. The trick isn't to disappear. The trick is to be the one holding the pen, Shepard isn't avoiding suspicion. He's making sure suspicion has somewhere else to go. He suggests other suspects gently. He omits 1 minute from his timeline. He volunteers information that makes other people look worse. And the whole time, he's writing an account that future readers will trust, because narrators are supposed to be trustworthy. He's wrong about the trustworthy part. Your mission. You know who did it. Now build 6 suspects who could have. Each one needs a motive, an opportunity, a flimsy alibi, and at least one suspicious behavior. The killer will hide in plain sight by being the most helpful, most observant, most quotable person in the room. Your 6 suspects need to be loud enough to drown him out. You're not solving a mystery this week. You're building one. The reader will think they're being clever. They'll be wrong. The guilt checklist. Every suspect needs all 4: means and opportunity. Could they have gotten to the study? Could they have reached the dagger? Visible motive. Their reason to kill is visible to a reader paying attention. No alibi. They can't account for where they were at 9:30 p.m., acting suspicious. Something about their behavior is off. If any of these is missing, the suspect doesn't earn their spot in your 6. Suspect 1, the red herring. Motive. Money. Matches the killer. This is the suspect everyone will assume is guilty. They look guiltier than the killer. They have the most obvious motive. They behaved badly the night of the murder. They might have actually run. In Christie's original, this was Ralph Payton, Roger's stepson and primary heir, secretly in debt, who vanished the night of the murder. The killer was actively framing him. Half the village was sure he did it. Build yours, someone who stands to inherit, or someone in such immediate financial desperation that killing for money reads as plausible. Their disappearance, evasion, or strange behavior should be explainable later by something embarrassing but not murderous. A debt. A secret marriage. A pawned heirloom. The killer should benefit from suggesting them. Craft tip from Christie. Her best red herrings aren't framed by the killer planting evidence. They're framed by the killer simply not correcting other people's wrong assumptions. The red herring's behavior does the framing for free. The killer just lets it sit. Reflect. Who is your main red herring? What's their relationship to the victim? What did they do that night that makes them look guilty? What's the real, mundane explanation for their behavior? How does the killer, your narrator figure, use this person's reputation to deflect suspicion? Murder board template. Use this murder board format for every suspect. You'll want it laid out so you can move them around as the week goes on. Name. Relationship to victim. Motive. Type. Hearts love diamonds. Money spades power clubs. Fear. Specific motive. Alibi. And why it doesn't hold. Suspicious behavior. What they're really hiding. Here's a filled-in example for a sample. Red herring. Let's brainstorm a red herring suspect to get you started. Call him Edmund Marsh. He's the victim's nephew and the named heir, which means he stands to inherit £40,000 the moment Roger dies. His motive type is money, the red diamond suit. The specific motive is that he's been quietly bleeding cash to a moneylender. £3,000 in the hole. The kind of debt that makes inheritance feel less like a windfall and more like oxygen. His alibi is that he was walking the grounds at the time of the murder. No witnesses. His coat was wet when he came back in. His suspicious behavior is a list, not a single thing. He left the dinner party early. The next morning, the housekeeper caught him packing a suitcase. By lunch, the village telegraph office had sold him a ticket to Calais. The whole village reads this as guilt. The detective reads it as guilt. What Edmund Marsh is actually hiding is that he's secretly married to a woman his family doesn't know about, And the moneylender is hers, not his. He wasn't running from the murder. He was running to her. That's one card. 7 fields, 3 minutes to fill out. Now do it 5 more times for the other archetypes, and the murder board is built. Suspect 2. The jilted lover. Motive: heart love. Someone with a romantic history with the victim, or with someone the victim controlled. Their feelings are still active. They're still carrying something of the victim's, literally or figuratively. A letter, a ring, a grudge. In Christie's original, this slot was held by 2 people running in parallel. The major who'd been silently in love with the victim's niece for years and never spoke up. The stepson secretly married to the parlor-maid while also engaged to that same niece. Christie ran 2 love triangles inside one country house and let the reader try to keep them straight. Build yours. Someone whose romance creates an alibi problem. They were where they shouldn't have been, with someone they shouldn't have been with, the night the victim died. They'd rather not say. They'd much rather be suspected of murder than have to explain the affair. Craft tip from Christie: the love motive plays best when the lover thinks revealing the affair is somehow worse than being suspected of murder. Class panic, social ruin, marital fallout. The cover-up of the smaller crime becomes the cover for the bigger one. Reflect. Who is your jilted lover? What's their connection to the victim or the victim's circle? What romance are they hiding? With whom? Why is the affair worse than the suspicion of murder? What did they leave behind at the scene that they can't admit to leaving? Suspect 3. Caught at the scene. Motive: club's fear of the smaller crime being exposed. Physically linked to the murder location at the wrong moment, behaving evasively, refuses to give a clean account of why they were there. The reader will assume they're hiding the murder. They're hiding something smaller and more embarrassing. In Christie's original, this slot was filled by Parker the butler, caught eavesdropping at the study door, refused to explain, snooping in the silver. Real reason: he had a history of blackmailing previous employers and was freelancing again on the side. Not the killer, just a different criminal. Build yours. Someone caught somewhere they shouldn't be, who would rather take the suspicion than admit the real reason. Theft, eavesdropping, an affair on the premises, reading mail, pocketing a bottle. Their cover story is paper thin and they know it. So do you. Craft tip from Christie: the embarrassing real reason should still be illegal, just not murderous. Petty crime sells the panic. Someone caught actually innocent reads false. Someone caught at a different crime reads true. Reflect. Who is caught at the scene? What were they actually doing? Why is the real reason worse to admit than the murder? How does the killer use this person's silence? What detail betrays them eventually? Suspect 4. The insider. Motive: Spade's power. Inner circle access. Knows the victim's papers, schedule, finances, secrets. Behaves helpfully throughout the investigation. The reader trusts them because the narrator, your killer, acts the same way. This is the killer's structural mirror. The reader has to learn to distinguish them. In Christie's original, this was Jeffrey Raymond, the secretary. Well-spoken, calm, managed everything, knew the will, was personally in debt. The kind of suspect Hercule Poirot has to test. Build yours. Someone whose role gives them total access. A secretary, a lawyer, a steward, an estate manager, a private nurse. They benefit from the victim's death in a structural way. Promotion, control, removal of an obstacle to a project they care about. They're cooperative with the investigation. They want to help. Craft tip from Christie: make this suspect mirror the killer's surface behavior. Same calm, same helpfulness, Same readiness to volunteer. The point is, the reader has to choose between two equally plausible narrators of events. One is the actual narrator. The other is the decoy. Reflect. Who is your insider? What role gives them access? What's their power motive? What do they gain from the victim's death? How is their behavior the mirror of the killer's? What's the small detail that lets the reader tell them apart? Suspect 5. The outsider. Motive: clubs, fear. No known connection to the victim's circle. Newer to the area, lower in the social hierarchy, or otherwise socially adjacent rather than embedded. Hiding something that has nothing to do with the murder. Their secret reads as class-coded guilt to the upper crust observers around them. In Christie's original, this slot belonged to Ursula Bourne, the parlor maid. Manners and education that didn't match her station. Hiding a secret marriage to the victim's stepson. Had a furious argument with the victim that night when he found out who she really was. The upper-class characters around her assumed her panic was guilt. It was class shame. Build yours. A servant, a tradesperson, a new resident, someone with refined manners they're trying to hide. Their secret should be unrelated to the killing. The reader should want to suspect them because their behavior reads as guilty. The reader should also feel bad about doing that. Craft tip from Christie. The outsider's secret is often the most sympathetic of all the suspect's secrets. Their crime, if there is one, is structural rather than moral. They married above their station. They're hiding their education. They're protecting someone they love. The reader's instinct to suspect them should leave a bad taste behind. Reflect. Who is your outsider? What gives them outsider status? What are they actually hiding? Why does their secret read as guilty to other suspects? What moment makes the reader feel bad about having suspected them? Suspect 6. The wild card. Motive: player's choice. Player's pick. Must share at least one off-the-page connection to another suspect on your board. Unspoken love, a debt, a childhood history, a silent grudge. Something that doesn't surface in the casual dinner party conversation, but that comes out if the detective asks the right question of the right person. In Christie's original, this slot belonged to Major Hector Blunt. Big game hunter, stoic, old friend of the victim. Silently in love with the niece for years and unable to say so. Spoke maybe 30 lines in the whole book. Watched everything. Build yours. The suspect who connects to another suspect's storyline through a thread the reader doesn't see at first. The connection should be one that, when revealed, reframes another suspect's motive entirely. The wild card is the suspect who explains why someone else acted the way they did. Craft tip from Christie. The wild card works best when they're the suspect with the fewest lines and the most complete inner life. Their silence reads as either guilt or honor, and the reader can't tell which until the detective makes them speak. Reflect. Who is your wild card? What connects them to another suspect? What's their motive? Why is it visible only to a careful reader? What single moment in the story do they witness that nobody else does? What would they say if the detective sat them down for one quiet hour? The lineup test. Before you move on to day 2, run your 6 suspects through this. Every suspect has a motive. At least 3 suspects look guiltier than the killer. No 2 suspects share the exact same specific motive. Suit overlap is fine. Reasons should differ. The red herring is more suspicious than the killer. At least one suspect makes you feel bad suspecting them. You can picture each suspect being questioned. If any box is unchecked, you've got rebuilding to do before tomorrow. Day 1. Challenge. The editor calls. Your editor reads pages on the train home and calls you from the platform. There's a child crying somewhere behind her and she's pretending she doesn't notice. Two of your suspects share a motive type. I know. You can't avoid it with 6 suspects and 4 types. But the 2 you've doubled up are doing the same emotional work. The reader can't feel the difference. Pick one of them. Swap the motive. Tell me by Tuesday. She doesn't say goodbye. Pick a suspect, swap their motive type. Walk through what changes. Does their alibi still make sense? Does their suspicious behavior still read? Does the lineup feel more spread out? Or did you just trade one duplication for another? If you can't make the swap work, the original assignment was load-bearing and you've just learned something useful. Tomorrow, someone in your country house was sleeping with someone they shouldn't have been. Probably more than one someone. We're going to wreck 2 alibis with 1 affair. Day 2. Someone's sleeping with someone. Marketing called this morning. They want to know if there's a romance angle. There's always a romance angle. There has to be. Readers want their murder mysteries to come with a little ache underneath. A little ache is what makes the murder hit. Lucky for us, Christie already laid the romance grid for this country house. We have a recently dead fiancé whose engagement to the victim was less than a month old. We have a niece officially engaged to one stepson and secretly being adored from across the room by a different man. We have a stepson secretly married to a parlor maid. We have a doctor with a manuscript and no wife. That's already 4 operative romances in one house. We need at least one of yours. Pick 2 suspects. Give them a romance. Choose 2 from your 6. Decide what kind of romance connects them. It doesn't have to be active. It can be a closed romance, a one-sided romance, a romance that ended badly years ago, a romance that almost happened. The point is that a private feeling exists between them that doesn't appear in their public statements. Then ask 3 questions about it. 1. Does this affair break an alibi? If suspect A claimed to be alone in the library at 9:30 p.m. and suspect B claimed to be on a walk, but they were actually together, both alibis are now lies. They're each other's witness, but neither can say so without exposing the affair. Now the detective sees 2 evasive suspects who can't account for their evening. The reader sees 2 guilty-looking people. You see the truth. 2. Does this affair create a second motive? The romance gives one of them a reason to want the victim out of the way that has nothing to do with money or power. The victim disapproved. The victim was about to tell. The victim was a romantic rival. The victim controlled an inheritance that the romance depended on. Suddenly, a suspect who looked like clubs, fear also has heart's love stacked underneath, and the reader can't tell which is doing the work. 3. Does this affair contradict someone's testimony? Someone said suspect A was at the dinner party from 8 to 10 p.m. The romance proves that's a lie. The witness to that lie is now lying for them. Who is the witness? Are they doing it out of loyalty, bribery, their own affair? Christie-specific setting notes. The interwar country house gives you a particular flavor of romance. Servants and family members across class lines, forbidden but real. Engagements arranged for inheritance reasons, loveless on at least one side. Wartime histories that nobody talks about openly. The war ended 8 years ago. But letters. So many letters. Burned, hidden, intercepted, found. A handkerchief embroidered with the wrong initials. A note slipped under the wrong door. A photograph in the lining of a coat. Choose one specific object that proves the affair exists. The detective will find it. Craft tip. A second affair is even better than one. The first affair distracts the reader. The second affair reveals something about the first that nobody saw coming. If you can stand it, build 2 romances among your 6 and let them interact. The killer. Your narrator knows about both. He's been the village doctor for 15 years. He knows everyone's secrets. He'll mention one of them in his manuscript. He'll omit the other. Which one does he omit, and why? Reflect. Which two suspects share a romance? What is it? Whose alibi does it wreck? Whose motive does it create? What single object proves the affair? Which affair does your narrator-killer omit from his notes? And what does that omission do? Tomorrow, the village busybody saw something. She's the village busybody, so she saw a lot of things. Most of them wrong. Day 3. A busybody saw something. Let's complicate Christie's plot. Your beta reader emailed you at midnight. They're loving the mystery, but there's just not enough cozy small-town gossip. It'd be great to read more of this story's gossip running around the village spreading their half-baked theories. The original book's gossip's name is Caroline. She lives in the doctor's house because she's the doctor's older sister, and she has not stopped talking about the murder since approximately 15 minutes after she heard about it. She has the best sources. She has theories. She has been right about so many things over so many years that nobody can risk dismissing her. She also lives with the killer. She doesn't know it. You need to make sure your gossip's version of events sends your investigation sideways for at least one chapter. What she saw. Decide what your village busybody character witnessed. She's the eyes of the village, so what she witnessed should be specific, dated, timed, and confidently delivered. Examples. She saw suspect X walking the lane behind Fernley Park at exactly 9:25 p.m., carrying something heavy under his coat. She saw a woman in a green coat coming out of the side gate at 9:40 p.m. She didn't recognize her, but she would absolutely know her again. She saw the gardener's son arguing with someone in the rose garden the morning of the murder. She heard a man's voice through the study window at 9:30 p.m., and the voice she heard wasn't the victim's. She tells the detective. The detective writes it down. She's also wrong. Busybodies are usually right about the small things and wrong about the big ones. Choose which kind of wrong yours is going to be. Misidentification. She saw someone. She named the wrong someone. The person she saw was actually a different suspect entirely, or someone not on your suspect list at all. Her certainty makes the misidentification harder to dislodge. Bad timing. She got the event right but the time wrong. The 9:25 p.m. walker was actually walking at 8:25 p.m., off by an hour. Her sense of time is bad because she'd had 2 sherries at the vicarage and didn't want to admit it. The real reason. She saw what she saw. She reported what she saw. But the reason behind what she saw is different from what she thinks. The man arguing in the rose garden wasn't planning a murder. He was apologizing for something completely unrelated. Craft tip. The false witness redirects the investigation towards someone the reader had already started to suspect. That's the trick. The busybody's testimony should send the detective in the direction the reader is already leaning. Then, when she turns out to be wrong, the reader has to acknowledge that they were leaning the wrong way too. That's the moment the reader starts to wonder if anyone in this book is reliable, including the narrator. The killer, your doctor, is going to engage with the busybody's testimony in his manuscript. He'll take it seriously on the page. He'll add subtle credibility to it. He'll suggest someone follow up. He's helping. He's always helping. Reflect. Who is your busybody? What's her connection to the village? What did she see? When? Who did she tell? Is she knowingly trying to help the killer? Which kind of wrong is she? Misidentification, bad timing, or the real reason? Which suspect does her testimony redirect toward, and why is that the wrong direction? Tomorrow, somebody's about to die. Probably one of your 6. Definitely not the right one. Let's take a quick break from the plotting. If you're having fun with this, hit subscribe before the next death. We create free mystery plotting games for you to practice your creativity. Subscribe so you don't miss next week. Now back to the body. Day 4. Kill your darlings. Chapter 12. One of your suspects is found dead in a place that immediately tells you they were on the verge of telling someone something. Your agent texts you. 2 bodies? Are you sure? Yes. 2 bodies. That's how this works. Your editor calls and just says finally and hangs up. Your mother sends you a passive-aggressive voicemail about how she always thought you'd write something cozy. This is cozy. Cozy has a body count. A second murder accomplishes 3 things at once. It shrinks your suspect pool. It reveals what the first victim almost had. And it gives the killer, your narrator, an excuse to be the one who finds the body. Again. Body count math. Pick one of these 3 approaches. Kill the red herring. Your most suspected suspect dies. Now the reader has to start over. The person they'd been mentally convicting can no longer have done it. The killer benefits enormously. So does your plot, because now you can reveal everything the red herring knew posthumously through letters, witnesses, or the killer's helpful summary. Kill a minor suspect. Someone who's been on the page but hasn't yet been on the suspect shortlist dies. This pulls them up into the spotlight retroactively. The reader has to ask, why this person? What did they know that we didn't know they knew? Stage it as self-inflicted or accident. The killer, your narrator, makes the second death look self-inflicted or accidental. The detective is suspicious. The killer is helpful, present, and quotable about why it couldn't possibly be suspicious. The reader has to decide whether to trust the helpful man with the notebook. Christie-specific bonus. The second death method shouldn't be the same as the first. The first was a stabbing in a locked study. The second should be something more ambient, something less personal, something the killer could use to frame another suspect. Possibilities for an interwar country house, poisoned medicine dispensed by the village doctor. Who would notice? Drowning at the village pond. Who could have pushed? A fall down the back stairs in a house with badly lit servants' corridors. Strangulation in the orchard, dressed as a self-hanging. A wrong dose taken from the medicine cabinet by someone who didn't know what was in it. Notice how every one of these can plausibly root through the village doctor without making him obviously responsible. That's the point. Pro tip. The second victim almost always knew something the first victim didn't get to tell. Mrs. Ferrars's letter was on Roger's desk the night he died. Roger never finished reading it. Who was the next person who could have read it? That's your second victim. The killer, your narrator, destroys the letter. He says in his manuscript that he searched the desk and didn't find it. The reader believes him because he's the one writing. He's been the one writing since page 1. Reflect. Who is your second victim? Which of the 3 approaches did you pick? What did they know? Who could they have told? How does the killer access the second crime scene? What does the killer's manuscript say about this death? And what does it leave out? Tomorrow, someone is about to walk into the police station and confess. They didn't do it. Your killer is going to let them. Now what? Day 5. Someone false confesses. Editor's note, in red. Someone's about to walk into the police station and say they did it. They didn't. Your killer is going to let them. The question is, who confesses, why, and how you handle it without losing your third act. A false confession is one of the most useful complications in a mystery plot. It's free deflection for the killer, free emotional weight for the reader, free pressure on the detective. Christie didn't use one in Ackroyd, but the structure absolutely supports it. Half the village already thinks Ralph Payton did it. If Ralph walks in and says he killed Roger, the case is closed. The doctor goes back to his manuscript. The detective has to disprove a confession instead of finding evidence. The player's job: pick the confessor, the reason they're confessing, and the one detail in the confession that's wrong. 4 options. 1. The red herring confesses to protect someone. The suspect everyone already suspects walks into the station. They confess. They give specifics. They've decided this is the cleanest way to protect the person they're actually trying to shield. Christie's Ralph would have confessed to protect his secret wife. Your red herring confesses to protect the person their secret romance has been hiding. Implicates, shifts heat onto the protected person, who now has to either accept the rescue or contradict the confession out loud. 2. The jilted lover confesses, out of guilt. Not for the murder, for something they did wrong adjacent to the murder. They've decided they deserve punishment, and this murder is the punishment they're claiming. False confession driven by misplaced moral logic. Implicates, opens up the lover's actual wrongdoing as a parallel storyline. The detective has to untangle 2 crimes at once. 3. The outsider confesses, under pressure. The servant, the newcomer. The person who knows that if a case stays open too long, suspicion will land on them because of their class or their outsider status. They confess to end the investigation faster than it can ruin them. False confession driven by survival math. Implicates, tells the reader something brutal about the village's social order. The detective has to recognize a confession that comes from fear, not guilt. 4. The wild card confesses, to take the fall for the killer. This is the dangerous one. Someone confesses because they know who actually did it, and they've decided to take the blame anyway. Maybe they love the killer. Maybe they owe the killer. Maybe they're dying and have nothing left to lose. The killer didn't ask for this. The killer would actually rather not have it. But once the confession lands, the killer has to choose. Accept it, or expose himself. Implicates, forces the killer into a moral choice. This is the version where the doctor's manuscript starts to read as ambiguous about whether he's a monster or a survivor. Craft tip. Every false confession needs one detail that doesn't fit. The confessor names the wrong time. They get the weapon almost right. They describe the study from the wrong angle. The detective notices the tell. The reader notices it too, on a reread. That single wrong detail is the door back into the real case. The killer's manuscript handles the confession however the killer needs it to. He can write about the confession with regret. He can write about it with relief. He can omit the detail that doesn't fit. The reader is watching him handle a gift he didn't ask for, and the reader's trust in him should tighten or loosen depending on which version you write. Reflect. Who confesses in your version? Why? What's the psychological mechanic driving them? What's the one detail in the confession that's wrong? How does your killer narrator handle the confession in his manuscript? Does he believe it? Pretend to? Subtly contradict it? Tomorrow. The editor's final note. The case has a backstory you haven't fully written. The detective is about to find it. So are you. Day 6. The origin reveal. Editor's note, in red. Every mystery has a moment when the past surfaces and the present makes sense for the first time. The detective sits the family down and explains where this all really started. That moment is your origin reveal. You haven't decided where your story actually begins. You're going to today. The marketing team will bundle this as a prequel short story with your special edition hardback. The origin reveal is the third act moment when the case's true genesis is uncovered. Not when the murder happened, but when the conditions for the murder were created. Christie planted this in Ackroyd through Mrs. Ferrars's letter. The real start of the case was a year earlier, when Shepard discovered Mrs. Ferrars had killed her husband and began blackmailing her. The murder of Roger was the slow-motion end of a longer story. Your version needs an origin, too, and it should reframe everything the reader has been assuming. And since your editor wants it to be a whole thing, you need to expand your origin story beyond Christie's version. 4 options. 1. The blackmail started earlier. Mrs. Ferrars wasn't your killer's first victim. He'd been bleeding someone else in the village for years before the Ferrars matter. The original target died, was discredited, or was driven out. Mrs. Ferrars's death is the second collapse, not the first. The detective uncovers a paper trail going back a decade. Reframes. Your killer is a serial blackmailer, not an opportunist. The murder of Roger was always going to happen. Only the timing was a variable. 2. The original murder was someone else's. Mrs. Ferrars didn't kill her husband. Someone else in the village did. Mrs. Ferrars knew and was protecting them. The killer's blackmail wasn't really aimed at her. It was aimed through her, at the person she was shielding. Mrs. Ferrars paid for someone else's crime. The real husband killer is still in the village. They've been on the suspect board the whole time. Reframes. Opens up a third dead body in the backstory and recasts one of your 6 suspects as a long-buried murderer in their own right. The detective has to solve 2 old crimes alongside the current one. 3. The case started 20 years ago. A scandal in the village from decades back. Most of your suspects were children when it happened. The killer was a young man, just starting his medical practice. He did something then that's been quietly determining his choices ever since. The current murders are the late echo of that original wrong. The detective uncovers an old newspaper clipping, a half-burned photograph, a confession nobody remembers hearing. Reframes. Makes your killer a man with a much longer shadow. His blackmail isn't opportunism, it's a defense mechanism built over 20 years of fear that the original thing will surface. 4. The victim was the criminal. Roger Ackroyd wasn't innocent. He'd been running a scheme of his own. Blackmail, embezzlement, a buried scandal in his factory's history. Your killer was a smaller participant in something Roger started. And the murder is the moment the apprentice killed the master to stop being controlled. The wealthy, generous patriarch's surface story is the lie of the whole book. Reframes. This is the angriest version. Your killer becomes a villain victim. The reader has to renegotiate who they were rooting for, and the self-inflicted second death now reads differently. Craft tip. The origin reveal works only if the past has been physically present in the story all along. A locked cabinet nobody opened. A name that came up once in Chapter 4. An old photograph on the doctor's mantle that nobody mentioned. The reader needs to be able to flip back and find the planted evidence. If the origin shows up only in Chapter 25, you cheated. If it's been visible since Chapter 3, you won. This is also the moment that decides what kind of mystery you've written. The blackmail started earlier version is procedural. The original murder was someone else's version is operatic. The 20 years ago version is psychological. The victim was the criminal version is bitter. Pick the kind of book you've been writing, then pick the origin that fits. Or pick the origin you want to write toward and rebuild your earlier chapters until they earn it. Reflect. What's the true origin of the case in your version? Where in your earlier chapters is the evidence planted? Which of your 6 suspects gets recast by the reveal? How? What kind of mystery does this make your book? Procedural, operatic, psychological, or bitter? Congratulations, you plotted your own version of the murder of Roger Ackroyd. 6 days of challenges, 6 suspects, 3 of them with secret romances, 2 dead bodies, one of them officially a self-inflicted death that won't sit right, a village busybody, a false confession that almost held, an origin you traced back to where this story really began. A manuscript still being written by the man who killed 2 people and figured out a way to tell the story anyway. You didn't solve a mystery this week. You built one. You took a 1926 country house frame and you rebuilt the cast from scratch. You named your own red herring. You picked your own concealment device. You decided which of the village's secrets stayed in the killer's notes and which ones got cut. If your lineup survived all 6 challenges, you've plotted a great mystery. If you've enjoyed playing this Red Herrings mystery plotting game, subscribe here free so you don't miss a single suspect.